The Dallas Cowboys just made moves that nobody saw coming, and if you blink today, you missed some serious franchise-altering decisions that are going to reshape how this defense looks for years. And before I break all of this down for you, I need you to do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button right now because we are covering every single Cowboys update the second it drops. And I promise you do not want to miss what is coming next, because this offseason is far from over. Day one of free agency is almost in the books. And let me tell you something, the Cowboys front office came out swinging in ways that have me genuinely excited, but also scratching my head on a few things, because there are still massive holes on this roster that need to be addressed immediately. Let us start with the biggest splash of the day, and that is the trade for Rashawn Gary from the Green Bay Packers. Dallas sent a 2027 fourth-round pick to Green Bay for this edge rusher, and on paper this looks like a calculated gamble that could pay off huge dividends. Gary has shown flashes of being a dominant pass rusher when healthy, and that is the key word right there, when healthy, because injuries have been a concern, but the upside here is undeniable. The Cowboys desperately needed help getting after the quarterback, and Gary, paired with what they already have, could give opposing offensive lines nightmares. And here is what nobody is talking about with this move. The fact that Dallas only gave up a fourth rounder 2 years from now tells you everything about how the league currently values Gary. That is either a steal waiting to happen, or there are red flags behind closed doors that we do not know about yet. I am choosing to be optimistic here because this team needed a jolt of energy on that defensive line, and Gary provides exactly that. Now let us talk about the other major move that happened, and that is bringing in Jalen Thompson on a 3-year deal worth $33 million. Reports indicate that around $22 million of that is guaranteed over the first 2 seasons, with a signing bonus structure that keeps the year 1 cap hit around $5 million. This is exactly the kind of smart money management that Cowboys fans have been begging for. Thompson fills a gaping hole at the safety position that has been haunting this defense for way too long. Can he also slide into the nickel spot when needed? Absolutely, and that versatility is going to be huge for the defensive scheme moving forward. The Cowboys have been searching for a legitimate safety to anchor that back end, and Thompson checks a lot of boxes, but this team cannot stop here. If the front office thinks adding Gary and Thompson means the shopping is done, they are living in a fantasy world, because the holes on this roster are still glaring. Let me be real with you right now. The edge rusher depth chart is still concerning, even after the Gary acquisition. You have got Gary and Ezra Raku as your potential starters, and if Raku takes that next step, this could be a solid duo, but after that, it drops off a cliff. The depth pieces behind them are not going to strike fear into anyone, and that is a problem when you are trying to compete in a division with some of the best offensive lines in football. I would love to see one more veteran edge rusher added, whether that is through free agency or the draft, and here is where things get interesting because the edge market absolutely exploded today. Guys were getting paid left and right, with some contracts coming in way higher than anyone expected. One report indicated that the market for premier pass rushers was so robust that it might have priced Dallas out of certain conversations entirely. And the crazy part is Trey Hendrickson is still sitting out there as a free agent. Earlier today, there was buzz from league insiders suggesting that Dallas was expected to land Hendrickson, but it has been radio silent since then. The asking price for a player of his caliber is going to be astronomical, especially after watching what other edge rushers received in the opening hours of free agency. One recent update suggested that Dallas might not be major players for Hendrickson at this point, which honestly makes sense given the contracts that have been handed out. If the price tag is just too rich, does that mean the Cowboys pivot to a Tier 2 or Tier 3 option instead? Because names like Dante Fowler are still available and would fit what they want to do schematically. Would you still want Dallas to pursue Hendrickson if the cost is north of $25 million per year? Or do you take that money and spread it across multiple needs? Let me know in the comments, because this is a legitimate debate worth having. But here is the position group that has me losing sleep at night, and that is linebacker. The Cowboys absolutely must address this position before training camp, or this defense is going to have a massive weak link right in the middle. Looking at who is currently on the roster at off-ball linebacker, it is nowhere near good enough to compete at a high level. And that is not me being dramatic, that is just the reality of the situation. The good news is there are still options available, but the window is closing fast. Devin Lloyd stands out as arguably the best linebacker still on the open market, and adding him would be a significant upgrade over anything Dallas currently has. The question becomes, what is his market going to look like? Because earlier projections had him commanding somewhere in the $15 to $20 million range annually. At $15 million, I am absolutely in on that deal. But if it pushes toward 20, that becomes a tougher pill to swallow, given how this front office typically operates. Another name that keeps popping up is Bobby Okereke, who has been discussed favorably by people within the organization in the past. Is he my favorite option out there? No, he is not. But we have reached the point where beggars cannot be choosers, and you need warm bodies who can actually play at this position. Leo Chenal is an intriguing possibility as a hybrid linebacker edge type of player, but my concern is whether he can be the signal caller this defense needs, because he has never really been that guy in Kansas City. The Chiefs always had other players handling those responsibilities while Chenal filled a specific role. Then there is Caden Ellis, who I think is a sneaky good fit for what Dallas wants to do. He can blitz effectively, which is going to be important in this scheme, and he has experience playing multiple linebacker spots. At 30 years old, he is not a long-term solution, but he could absolutely help this team compete right now. Is this the move Dallas has to make, or do they hold out for someone with more upside? A new name that just entered the conversation is Dre Greenlaw, who was recently released and has a history with the Cowboys showing interest years ago. However, one report from a team insider suggests Dallas is not actively pursuing Greenlaw at this time, which is disappointing, because I think he would have been a solid addition when healthy. The injury history is a concern there, and maybe that is what is scaring the front office away from making that call. Levante David is another veteran option who fits that elder statesman role at linebacker. The man is 36 years old, so this would be a one-year rental situation at best, but he can still play at a high level when called upon. Patrick Queen has been mentioned as a potential trade target, and while he is coming off a down year, there is an argument that the scheme he would be playing in Dallas is closer to what made him successful in Baltimore. This is not a Kenneth Murray situation, where you are hoping a change of scenery unlocks potential that was never really there. Queen has shown he can be a difference maker when utilized properly, and the trade cost might be worth exploring. And here is what really stings about today. The Cowboys were apparently very competitive in trying to land Nakobe Dean. Reports indicate that Dallas was one of the finalists for the young linebacker, but he ultimately chose the Raiders instead. It sounds like the money was just slightly better elsewhere, which pushed him over the edge. That hurts, because Dean would have been exactly the kind of young impact player this defense needs at the position. The Cowboys reportedly had 5 Zoom meetings with free agents leading up to this period, and we know at least 3 of them were with Key Walker, Nakobe Dean, and Jalen Thompson. Landing Thompson is great, but losing out on both Walker and Dean at linebacker leaves a bitter taste, considering how badly that position needs to be addressed. Now let us talk about the salary cap maneuvering that made all of this possible, because the front office did some work behind the scenes to create flexibility. Terrence Steele agreed to a pay cut that saved the team around $9.4 million against the cap. Malik Hooker also took less money to the tune of about $2.2 million in savings. These moves were necessary because without them, Dallas would not have had the cap space to even bring in Gary and Thompson. Some fans have been critical of Steele, and I understand the frustration because his play has been inconsistent, but at the reduced salary he is now earning, the value actually makes sense. Looking ahead to next year, his cap number drops to something much more manageable in the 12 to 14 million range, which is not terrible for a starting tackle in this league. The restructures that are coming next will likely involve some of those defensive tackle contracts to create even more room for potential moves. The front office is clearly trying to be aggressive here, while also maintaining some semblance of fiscal responsibility. Looking at the cornerback position, I think this could be addressed through the draft if the right player falls to them at pick 12. The conversation around Trevon Diggs and where he plays continues, and there is a real possibility they want him sliding into a nickel role, which means finding a true outside corner becomes important. A rookie could step in and contribute immediately at that spot while letting the veterans handle the interior coverage duties. That is a viable path forward rather than spending big in free agency at the position. So, if you had to grade day one of Cowboys free agency right now, what letter are you giving them? Did they earn an A for being aggressive and filling needs? Or is this more of a C because the linebacker position remains a disaster waiting to happen? I am somewhere in the B range personally because I love the Thompson signing and the Gary trade has real upside, but this team is not done, and if they stop here without adding a legitimate linebacker, I am going to be furious. The roster still has too many question marks to feel confident about competing with the best teams in the NFC. The next few days are going to be critical, and honestly, if you are not subscribed to this channel yet, now is the time, because we are going to be covering every single move, trade rumor, and signing the moment it happens. You do not want to be the Cowboys fan who finds out about the next big move 2 days late because you missed the notification. The offseason is heating up and Jerry Jones appears ready to spend in ways we have not seen in recent years. Whether that translates to actual wins remains to be seen, but the effort is there, and that alone is refreshing after years of watching this team stand pat while the rest of the division loaded up. Drop a comment below telling me what position you want addressed next and who the player should be, because I want to know what Cowboys Nation is thinking right now. The passion in this fan base is unmatched, and your takes are always fire. Until the next update, keep believing in the star because this team is building something, and the foundation is starting to look a whole lot more solid than it did just 24 hours ago.